Hare Krishna. You ready? I'm just waiting for the day when you play the drum. He's learning systematically. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Pradjana Ranjana Yashodanandana Pradjana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Mr. Pad Paramahansa Padavajaka Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayom Vishnupad Paramahansa Padadikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. So let's just make sure what verse 1. Oh, I wanted to do to 719 again. I'm sorry. 719. So that's on page 327. In almost all of your books. Yes, all your books. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 17th day of October 2022 in San Diego, a reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are studying Chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute, Text 19, near the bottom of page 327. Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha Bahunang Janmanamante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudevak Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudevak Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudevak Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. Dhamarash.
Bahunam Janmanamante
Bahunam Janmanamante
Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate
Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate
Sudeva Sarvamiti
Vasudevak Sarvamiti
Samahatma Sudurlabha
Samahatma Sudurlabha Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudevak Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha
Bahunam Janmanamante
Bahunam Janmanamante
Jnanavamam Prapadyate
Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate
Vasudeva Sarvamiti
Vasudevak Sarvamiti
Samahatma Sudurlabha
Samahatma Sudurlabha. Prabhu? No? Okay. No? Okay. Go ahead, Prabhu.
Bahunam Janmanamante
Bahunam Janmanamante
Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate
Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate
Vasudeva Sarvamiti
Vasudevak Sarvamiti
Samahatma Sudurlabha
Samahatma Sudurlabha. Not bad. Mataji. Bahunam Janmanamante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudevak Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. So I'll read the synonyms, you just read along silently. Bahunam, many, Janmanam, repeated birth and deaths. Ante, after, Jnanavan, one who is in full knowledge. Mam, unto me, Prapadyate, surrenders. Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead, Krishna. Sarvam, everything, iti, thus. Saha, that. Maha-atma, great soul. Sudurlabha, very rare to see. Translation. Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, after many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Purport. The living entity, while executing devotional service or transcendental rituals, after many, many births, may actually become situated in transcendental pure knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. In the beginning of spiritual realization, while one is trying to give up one's attachment to materialism, there is some leaning toward impersonalism. But when one is further advanced, he can understand that there are activities in the spiritual life, and that these activities constitute devotional service. Realizing this, he becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrenders to Him. At such a time, one can understand that Lord Sri Krishna's mercy is everything, that He is the cause of all causes, and that this material manifestation is not independent from Him. He realizes the material world to be a perverted reflection of spiritual variegatedness, and realizes that in everything there is a relationship with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Thus, he thinks of everything in relation to Vasudeva, or Sri Krishna. Such a universal vision of Vasudeva precipitates one's full surrender to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna as the highest goal. Such surrendered great souls are very rare. This verse is very nicely explained in the 3rd chapter, verses 14 and 15 of the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Sahasrashirsha Purusha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat Sabhumim Vishvato Vritva Chatishtad Dashangulam Purusha Evedam Sarvam Yadbhutam Yacham Bhavyam Uttam Tatvasye Shano Yadanenati Rohati. Lord Vishnu has thousands of heads, thousands of eyes, and thousands of feet, entirely encompassing the whole universe. He still extends beyond it by 10 fingers' breadth. He is in fact this entire universe. He is all that was and all that will be. He is the Lord of immortality and of all that is nourished by food. In the Chandogya Upanishad 5.1.15, it is said, Na vaivacho na chankshusi na shrotrani namanang sitya chakshate prana iti eva chakshate prano evaitani sarvani bhavanti. In the body of a living being, neither the power to speak, nor the power to see, nor the power to hear, nor the power to think is the prime factor. It is the life air which is the center of all activities. Close quote. Similarly, Lord Vasudeva, or the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is the prime entity in everything. And because Vasudeva is all-pervading and everything is Vasudeva, the devotee surrenders in full knowledge. See Bhagavad Gita 7.17 and 11.40. So 7.17 we just studied. Okay. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So I wanted to read this verse again. You may recall we ended it with this verse last Wednesday. But it's such an important verse, I wanted to expand on it a little bit more. We kind of ran out of time. So, Bohonam Jamanamante, this means after many, many births, one surrenders unto Krishna. Out of knowledge. You may recall that a few verses back, Krishna gave explanation of 4 kinds of people who don't surrender to him, and 4 pious people who do surrender. There's the Dushkritinas, miscreants, who don't surrender. They fit more or less into 4 categories. This is text 15. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. And he has a long purport describing each of these characters. Some of them are very intelligent, but their knowledge has been stolen by illusion. In other words, they may be intelligent and work for the Defense Department and make hundreds of thousands a year, making weapons. They may be in Wall Street, manipulating the stock market, making millions of dollars. It takes a lot of intelligence for that. But it's misused. The intelligence is misused in the service of Maya. And so it just keeps people, that living entity, entangled more and more in the material energy. So that's the Dushkritina, the Maya Pritagyanas. And then there's the Mudas, the fools and rascals, lowest among men, and those whose knowledge has been stolen by illusion, and the out-and-out demons. These are 4. Then he gave 4 classes of pious people. They're not pure devotees, necessarily, but they approach Krishna for one reason or another. You may recall that's the very next verse. Chaturveda bhajante mam jana sukritanojana. So you have the contrast between the dushkritinas, the miscreants, and the sukritinas, who the pious people. And some are just, he says, the distress, those who are distressed and approach God out of distress. There are millions and billions of people who do that. They go to church and eventually everybody has some trouble in their lives, and they may, pray very ardently, please, my child is very ill, please, cure him, or whatever, out of distress. Now, this is not pure devotion. Krishna says, I'm sorry, it's a verse by Rupa Goswami, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, is that those who have no motive for praying to the Lord and chanting the holy name and bowing down, other than simply serving Krishna, simply for his pleasure, that's pure devotion. You don't approach, as Lord Chaitanya says famously in his Shikshastika, Nadanang nasundarin kavitang bhajagati shikamaye. I'm not approaching you, I don't want wealth. It's a very common thing. People go because they're broke, they need money. I don't want followers. I'm not praying to you for a very beautiful spouse. And I don't even want liberation, which is the greatest material benefit you can have. Is that no more birth, no more death, no more old age, no more disease, no more, that's a lot of suffering to get rid of. Says, I don't, Janmani Janmani Ishvare, birth after birth, what is he praying for? Unmotivated devotional service to you. Unmotivated means motivated only by the desire to please you, not for any desire on my part. That's pure devotion. And that verse comes at the beginning of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is the law book for Gaudiya Vaishnav followers. This is the ideal. But we should understand that in the beginning, many people who join the Hare Krishna movement, who chant Hare Krishna, began in one of these categories. Generally not looking for money, because you come to the temple and it's, you're going to find a lot of. But out of distress, yes. Out of distress and out of inquisitiveness. And, many, many people come, they get a book. It's intriguing. Like, this is a beautiful book. It's hard to get it now. Coming Back. You won't see them on the shelf here. They were written many, many years ago. During Prabhupada's time, this book was written. Mukunda Maharaj was one of the authors. Devotees wrote the books, and they quoted extensively from Prabhupada. And it's all about reincarnation. It's all about you're not that body, there is life after death. And then, you know what the last chapter is entitled by Mukunda Maharaj? Don't come back. And so there he introduces all of the principles of Krishna consciousness, how you can avoid coming back. But just the idea that there's empirical proof for life after death. There's a lot of quotes in there from that. This started coming out in the 70s. This professor, I forget his name now, Ian Stevenson, that's what it was. He was a psychologist or something in some southern university. And he was very interested in this possibility that there's life after death. How did he come across the idea that there might be? Well, there were repeated stories you find, usually from hospitals, where doctors are, someone has a heart attack and he almost dies and they perform CPR. I worked in a hospital. I know how, sometimes people come back from that. Many times they don't. They don't come out of it. But those who come out of it, sometimes they were saying, a certain select few, I was awake. I was like out of my body. You've heard of these? And they're hovering, the mind and the soul and the subtle body is hovering and watching the whole operation. Oh, and Dr. Jones came in, and then he had to run out. And he says, well, how did that happen? So this is how it started. So he went to India. And because there you'll find, for some reason, it's more in India than anyone else, not exclusively, small children who, when they begin to speak, they'll say something like, you're not really my mother. I belong to this other village. And they start naming names, and mostly the parents would just say, what are you talking? He'll grow out of it, or she'll grow out of it, But he went and he wanted to investigate. And mostly people live pretty locally, so the village is 25 miles or 10 miles away, And sure enough, he found out there was a person named like that. Some lady who was killed, and she was in her 30s, and she grew, In other words, he was able to confirm these things. So there's that story in the Coming Back book. So if you get that Coming Back, it's intriguing. I mean, that maybe there's life after death, So you read that, and then you're inquisitive. Well, let me go to there's a dress list at the end, and you come to the Hare Krishna temple, and then you get your Bhagavad Gita, and so just being inquisitive is very pious. If you're not, if you're dyed-in-the-wool atheist and says, "What did I get this thing for?" Get out of here. Or you put it on the shelf, and you grow up, and then your kid finds it, and then gets very curious, comes to the temple. So being inquisitive, being in search of money or wealth, or being distressed, these are pious people who come to Krishna, because once you come in the association of devotees, or you can see the deities, then Krishna can attract you. You're able to be attracted. And often, Prabhupada would say the people who came, especially they had some history of bhakti in previous life. Sometimes he would say, "My spiritual master sent you," that you were his associates, and now you come the next person. So anyway, this is the pious people, and you remember that of the four, those who are really in knowledge, Krishna praises in the next verse. Those who really they know something about the science of bhakti, and they really want to. So Krishna says, these are really. He says, of these, Tesham, what does he say? It's 17. Of these, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best. For I am very dear to him, and he is dear to me. So he comes immediately to, a sincere devotee. They're all magnanimous, but the jnani is like my very self. And now in this verse that we just read, this is the epitome of having knowledge. He says sometimes it may take many, many births before you come to the point of, and the proof that you're actually in knowledge, surrender. That you surrender unto Vasudeva. Because don't forget, or Krishna. Bahunam jamanamante jnanavam papadyate. After many, many births, such a person who is really in knowledge, jnanavan, surrenders unto me, Vasudeva. Understanding that Vasudeva is everything. Now, Krishna explained how Vasudeva is everything in the first part of the chapter. He started where we live. It's very, very wonderful instruction. He said, Bhoomer, Apo, Onaro, Vayo. We experience this every day. Bhumi simply means all the solid matter. Apo means all the liquids, right? We've got a big ocean out here. And this is where we live. Anala, fire. Fire, we see, the electricity includes there. Fire in the stomach that we digest. Fire we have everywhere, in the cars. And air, and gases. And then there's ether, space, etc. That's also a subtle material element. And then the finer elements, which we live with every day, the mind. Everyone has a mind, but you can't see it, but it's there. Intelligence, the discriminating factor. This varies amongst different species, obviously. And, a little cat has very rudimentary intelligence, and human beings have greater. That's why this is a very valuable birth, and we should take advantage of it. And finally, the sense of self or ego. All of these are Krishna's gross and subtle elements. He says, apareyam, these are not para, these are not transcendental, these are the lower energies, the ones that aren't alive, that aren't conscious. Apareyam etastranyam prakriti viddhime param, but you should know that there is also a para prakriti. Who knows what the para prakriti is? Yeah. The jiva, the soul. Apare mitastranyam prakriti viddhime jiva bhutam. The jiva bhutam mahabhava yedam dayate jagat. And these jivas, including ourselves, it says exploiting the universe, but the word dayate means like sustaining. And like we're each sustaining our own little mini-universe. These bodies probably say it's like a little mini-universe. We're supposedly the Lord and Master, but we're really not in full control, right? We're relying on Krishna, higher energies. But we're more or less, our will is moving the body. But it's a very complicated machine. And we're sustaining it. The living energy, the conscious energy, indestructible, never born, never dies. Najayate meyate bhakara. We learned that at the beginning of Gita, 2nd chapter. So it's that living entity that reincarnates. Once the body drops, it just wears out, for whatever reason, the living entity doesn't perish, and is encased in the subtle body. The subtle body does not die. The mind, intelligence, and ego. So just like people who come back, they almost die and they come back, near-death experiences. So they're able to recount some their experience, like in the hospital, they witness this, and somehow they can see, they hear, and when you actually die, you're also aware. That's why I like to say, the first thing that happens when anyone dies, human being, is that I'm not dead. What's going on? Who are those guys? We're just reading in the sixth canon in the morning about the Yamadutas, because the creation is extremely complicated, and there are a set of laws. We know there are a set of natural laws, but we should know that those laws are set by God, the supreme intelligence. The amount of intelligence needed to run everything like this is inconceivable. It's God, it's Krishna. So there are laws of nature, just like I'm just listening to Prabhupada lectures all the time, and he's describing how even without knowing it, you're committing sins constantly. You're walking on the street and you're killing some ants. You light the stove and poof, there goes some insect. That counts. That counts. You have to atone for that. If you don't, then you suffer. So that's why devotees, when you start chanting a lot, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, and you're supposed to get to the point of chanting constantly, you're constantly negating all of these sins you're performing, even unknowingly. So the one who knows that, now here it says, one who knows that Vasudeva is everything. Well, how is he everything? One of the ways he's everything is because it's all his energy. We are his energy. This unconscious elements I went through, that's all his energy. And when we investigate more, we find out that there's a whole existence, world that we can't perceive, the spiritual world, that's invisible to our material eyes, that's also his energy, the internal energy. With his internal energy, he manifests the Goloka Vrindavan planet, all the Vaikuntha planets. They're all made of chit, they're all made of consciousness. Everything, can you imagine? You're living in a world, everything is completely harmonious. Whoever's not harmonious, out you go into the material world. That's how we got here. We didn't want to surrender, we wanted to be the enjoyers. But actually, the way of real enjoyment, eternally, you can't enjoy materially, obviously, eternally. You learn that, when you're 5 years old. You can enjoy a little bit, but then what happened? My sister stole my toy, This is material life. You learn, and as you go on, it keeps happening. But where is there this eternal, bliss, right? Eternal, unlimited knowledge, eternal life, and bliss. Satchidananda. That's the spiritual world. Now, with our materially conditioned minds, it sounds like a fantasy. It sounds like, yeah, you wish it was something like that, but come on, let's get back to reality. But this is where the importance of the parampara comes in. Meaning the parampara is a disciplic succession of realized souls, of whom the latest is Srila Prabhupada. And, he invokes, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, all the way back to Madhvacharya, Vyasadeva. These are all real people, and they left a record of their writings. In Srila Prabhupada, we have, evidence of his, he walked amongst us. And so they're all saying, no, it's real. You just can't see it with your material eyes. You have to purify your senses, then you can perceive it more and more, the reality. And so what we're doing now, studying the words of God, of Krishna and his pure devotee, this is the process of enlightenment in this age. Hearing, chanting, and trying to understand and live according to the tenets. And as soon as you begin, because this age is Kali Yuga, we have a special dispensation. Okay, you can't understand the philosophy, Sanskrit is too hard. Okay, just learn 3 words of Sanskrit. Okay, that's it. Hare, Krishna, and Rama. You see? You chant them in this way. You don't have to know any philosophy. Just begin with that. And if you begin with that, then from inside, Krishna, he gives you the intelligence. Well, there's something here. Let me see if I can investigate, And before long, you're practicing more of the principles, and you're just simply making the process work faster. The chanting alone will take you back to Godhead. If you can chant purely, and if you can really follow it. But how are you going to do that? you need training and you need association to really come to that point. But the point is that to begin the process, the chanting is more than sufficient, and that's how Prabhupada began the movement. What books did he have? He had these 3 books. Not everyone was reading the books, and if you try to read those books, it's not so easy. It's the Prabhupada's Indian English, they're wonderful, don't get me wrong. But basically, he had the chanting, he had himself, he had his word, people were listening to him, and gradually attracted some people to become more sincere. They helped him produce the books, the first books. They're a little cruder, now we find them a little as you get experience. But it all started with the holy name. He had great faith in the holy name, the power of the holy name, to purify anyone from any station in life. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come to America, But he had that, and that was given to him by his own spiritual master. So, what is Prabhupada sharing with us here? That while executing devotional service or transcendental rituals after many, many births, now he says through many, many births, we don't know how many births we've been practicing Krishna consciousness. We may have been practicing, many. There's only a few of us here, a few of us online. And even you go around the whole movement, okay, maybe there's 500,000 at this point, serious practitioners around the world. They could be. But that's, out of 7.5 billion people. So it is rare. It's rare. So we should, I always say, okay, we got the lottery ticket, we're in a winning ticket. Not only are we human beings, but we've come in touch with this philosophy. We should take advantage of it and try to, as one of my favorite verses, those of you who heard these classes, I quote this all the time. Labdvasu durlabhamidam bahusambhavante manushamarta damanityamapi hadira turnam yateta napatet anamritya yavad nikshayasaya vishaya savataks yatosyat. So there Krishna is saying that you've attained this rare human form of life after many, many births. Sudurlabham, not easy to get. There's 7 billion out of trillions of living entities on this world. And after many, many births through different species, and manusham, human form, artadam, this is a key phrase. Artadam, arta means the value, in this case the supreme value of life. Sometimes it's called svarta, sva-arta, the goal of the soul. Arta can just mean money, something of value. But the most valuable thing is knowledge and realization whereby you can end the round of birth and death and go back home, back to Godhead. You have to have knowledge in order to know what to do, what not to do. So this is very, very invaluable. The English language is crazy. It's valuable, and if it's more valuable, it's invaluable. It's like, anyway, don't get me started on English. But you know what I mean. Very, very valuable. So artadam, but like all forms, anityam. It's not permanent. Time is passing. Don't waste any time. So one has to be dhira. Very important word. Dhira means sober-minded, thoughtful, not simply reacting to your modes of nature and the subtle emotions and things, but really using your brain and thinking, what's the best way I can use my time for my ultimate benefit? For the svarta or the shreya, nikshayasaya, there's another phrase, the ultimate good. So then he says, okay, now here's what you should do. Turnam yateta, it says immediately, without waiting and letting Maya in again, immediately, yateta, strive. You should strive for the ultimate good, shreya. As long as your body hasn't died, he says, anumritya yavat, death is always over our shoulder. We don't know when it's coming. We know it's coming, but we don't know when. So there's not a moment to lose. See the urgency. Turnam yateta means immediately strive. Anumritya yavat. Nikshayasaya. This word is so important. Nikshaya means, Shreyas means the good, and Nikshaya means the ultimate good. The ultimate good that you can strive for yourself and everyone who you influence. That's the thing. Which is Krishna consciousness, realization of yourself as a pure spirit soul, and realization of God as a supreme spirit soul. He's also, we don't use that phrase so much, but as a supreme spirit. And the relationship, and to live in that relationship and bring as many other people into the understanding as possible. That's the real perfect life, and that Prabhupada led that life, you know. He himself was fully realized, but that wasn't enough. He was in the mood of Prahlad Maharaj, who said, Naibod Vijay, he's speaking to Lord Nrsingadev. Lord Nrsingadev has killed his father, and he's not lamenting, because his father was the biggest demon, you know. And so it was a very, you know, wonderful act. And now Nrsingadev, who's like, you know, he not only killed his father, but thousands of his soldiers and everything. It was a big bloody scene. But it was all auspicious. And now when he sees Prahlad, he softens. Says this Komala Nrsinga. You know, Komala means gentle Nrsinga. You see, mostly you see, oh, you know. But then when he sees Prahlad, his heart is open. You know, this Prahlad is this great devotee. He suffered so much for him. So, Prahlad offers these prayers, beautiful prayers, in the 9th chapter, 7th canto. If you have access, you know, you can get online, you can read them. So near the end of his prayers, he says this. He says, Naibod Vijay Paraduratya Vaitadanyas Twadvi Yagaya Namahamana Magnachitta. My dear Lord, I am not at all disturbed. I have no disturbance in my whole life. Because Paratya Vaitadanyas, because I'm with you. Because I'm always thinking of you, I'm with you on the other side of the Vaitarani river, which is the river between the spiritual and material world. In other words, I can always, and anytime, any place. And he proved it. They tried to boil him in oil. And he was so much meditating and chanting Hare Krishna that it didn't affect him. His father freaked out. He said, where did you get your strength from? He tried to kill him in all these ways. Right? Any time I want, I can chant your glories and immerse myself in an ocean of nectar. So how can there be any unhappiness for me? But I'm lamenting. What is this? I am lamenting. Shoche. Tato vimukachetasa India. Vimukachetasa. All these words are so important. Vimukachetasa means turning your face away from God. All these fools and rascals, you know, conditioned souls, they've turned their face toward the material energy and they're completely absorbed in it and they forgot all about God. That's for mukha-chetasa. Indriyartha, for the sake of maya sukhaya, the illusory sense pleasure that comes and then is gone, leaving a residue in your mind of wanting to do it again, take you another birth so you can experience birth and death. It's the worst poison. The happiness that comes from sense gratification is your worst enemy. Prabhupada, that's a quote from Prabhupada. May not be verbatim, but he says it in the Gita. So, but Prahlad is feeling the empathy for them. Saying, I can't, next verse, he said, I'm not just going to go off alone and chant Hare Krishna, because I have to try to help these people, you know? And that's the mood of the Gaudiya Vaishnava. Like Lord Chaitanya showed, he's God himself. He came down to relish, you know, the nectar of chanting Hare Krishna and worshipping himself from Radharani's point of view. It's very esoteric. So where does he have any problems? But there he is, traveling around South India, you know, meeting with the atheists and the Mayavadis and debating with them, converting thousands and millions of people by chanting Hare Krishna. But I mean, he's taking the austerity, if you will, of walking barefoot. He's not traveling by any vehicles, thousands of miles down in South India to preach. You know, and so God Himself, He's showing us the model for how to live in this world. Try to be as much Krishna conscious as you can. Take it seriously, and then try to give the knowledge to others. And that's the ideal life. So after many, many births of cultivating knowledge, one who is truly in knowledge surrenders unto me, understanding that Vasudeva, myself, is everything. Such a Mahatma is very rare. So we have an opportunity to become such a Mahatma. You know, we understand. And the Bhagavad Gita is meant to help us see ourselves and the world through the eyes of Shastra. If we understand, everything is Krishna's energy, it all belongs to God. So it all should be used in His service. Just like this temple and its grounds, you know. Everything is, you know, I'm chanting my round. I chant my round in this room, in that corner, 2 hours every morning. And sometimes I just look around and I see, well, all of these objects are very sacred. They're very blessed because they're all being used in Krishna's service. There's not an ordinary chair there or an ordinary bench, you know. People are sitting on that bench and they're listening to kirtan, they're listening to Bhagavad Gita. Well, everything here, this is the nature. Even in the material realm, the material elements become spiritualized, including our own senses and body, by connecting them in yoga to Krishna through the devotional service. That's the whole science. So Krishna is saying it's very rare. So we should, if we really want to be that 1 in a million people after many, many births, we can surrender to Krishna. So then he's going to go back. This is how Krishna teaches, through contrast. Now he says, but, on the other hand, the next verse, he goes into those who are worshipping the demigods, rather than me. They're not surrendering to me, they're surrendering some demigods for material purposes. And this verse is also, there's a whole bunch of verses here about how, 4 verses that there's a passage, don't surrender to the demigods out of material energy. If you want some material need, come to me. He's saying that you'd be very pious, and I could give you what you need, and then if I really show my mercy, I'll take everything away. So you'll have to just rely on me. That's another level. But anyway, we're at the point where Krishna is encouraging us to see him everywhere and use as much of his energy in his service, and then we'll get his blessings. All right, sorry to harangue you so much. Any conversation or questions on these points? Bahunam Janmanamante. Dharmaraj Prabhu.
Ian Stevenson's work is being continued by someone named Jim Tucker.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, someone left like $1 million so that part of the college, the university, can continue researching, and there's been now thousands of confirmed cases, and the details are just getting more intricate. And
wow, I didn't even know that.
I went to the university and I tried to give him a coming back, but he wasn't there that day. So
oh, I see.
Yeah, Haribol.
Thanks for letting us know that. I'm going to Google that. Get some more.
Jim Tucker. Oh, I thought you were going.
Okay. All right, let's go on. Now he's going to... These are the people who don't surrender to Krishna. They surrender to somebody else. Text 20. Kamaistaistarvata jnana papadyante nyadevata tang tam niyamamastaya prakritya niyataksvaya. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. Purport. Those who are freed from all material contamination surrender unto the Supreme Lord and engage in his devotional service. As long as the material contamination is not completely washed off, they are by nature non-devotees. But even those who have material desires and who resort to the Supreme Lord are not so much attracted by the external nature. Because of approaching the right goal, they soon become free from all material lust. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is recommended that whether one is a pure devotee and is free from all material desires, or is full of material desires, or desires liberation from material contamination, he should in all cases surrender unto Vasudeva and worship him, as stated in the Bhagavatam 2.3.10. Akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. Less intelligent people who have lost their spiritual sense take shelter of demigods for immediate... What that verse means is, if one is free from all material desire, like the devotees, pure devotees, or is full of all kinds of material desires, sarvakamava, or who wants moksha, liberation, one who is udaradi, whose intelligence is sharp, should render intense devotional service, tivrena bhakti yogena, to who? Purusham Param, the Supreme Person, Krishna. And before this verse is a whole laundry list, a shopping list, say, not a laundry list, shopping list. If you want good health, you worship Surya. If you want a good wife, worship Urvashi, I think. Then if you want strong senses, worship Indra. There's a whole list. But then it says, but whether you're full of material desires or no material desires, you should worship intensely the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then you'll get what you really need. That's the best advice. Less intelligent people who have lost their spiritual sense take shelter of demigods for immediate fulfillment of material desires. That's the verse we just read, Kames Taistar. Generally, such people do not go to the Supreme Personality of Godhead because they are in the lower modes of nature, ignorance and passion, and therefore worship various demigods. Following the rules and regulations of worship, they are satisfied. The worshippers of demigods are motivated by small desires and do not know how to reach the supreme goal. But a devotee of the Supreme Lord is not misguided. Because in Vedic literature there are recommendations for worshipping different gods for different purposes, for example, a diseased man is recommended to worship the sun, those who are not devotees of the Lord think that for certain purposes demigods are better than the Supreme Lord. But a pure devotee knows that the Supreme Lord Krishna is the master of all. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi 5.142, it is said, Ekale Ishvara Krishna ar sababhritya. Only the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is master, and all others are servants. Therefore, a pure devotee never goes to demigods for satisfaction of his material needs. He depends on the Supreme Lord, and the pure devotee is satisfied with whatever he gives. So this is, in our modern Western culture, I think it's I can be safe saying this, that hardly anyone is worshiping any demigods, right? You might find that in India. But they're worshiping, in fact, powerful politicians, financial people, someone who has any power or money that can help you. Then you try to work for them, you try to praise them, like that. It's still going on. The same principle is going on. But you can see how ridiculous it is. They can't, at least Indra, if you please him, you can go to Indra Loka, and you can live for thousands or millions of years, and enjoy. But then it runs out, and as he says in chapter 9, you have to come back here. So you're not really making any progress. But the same thing in a perverted form is happening on every level of human society. People are approaching other people who they think can give something, whether it's material or knowledge or prestige or whatever it may be. And it's such a waste of human life, because even if you do get what you're trying to get, it's temporary. It's simply a false source of pleasure and prestige or safety. There's no safety, there's no real wealth here in the material world. It's all, yes, it's there, but it is ephemeral, and it can never give you what you're really looking for. It's fleeting. It's fleeting. It comes and it goes. Adyanta bantanke is my favorite verse, practically. Yehi sangsparshija boga dukayonaya evate. Adyanta bantankonteya nateshu ramate buddha. Those who are intelligent, Buddha, they don't take their pleasure in the fleeting sense gratification. Sangsparshija boga literally means enjoyment of the contact from the senses with their sense objects, and that includes the mind. Why? Because it comes and it goes, adyanta banta, beginning and an end, and it is the source of all your misery. Sometimes it's directly, obviously, the source of your misery. Drugs, people don't take drugs in order to suffer. They take drugs in order to enjoy, get high, and whatever, right? And you may do that for some time, for some time. But then at a certain point, you probably, you wreck your brain, or you do something like, I was reading this book about devotees in jail. It's called, a wonderful book called The Forbidden Voices. There's a sannyasi named Chandramauli Swami who's been working with the ISKCON prison ministry for years and years now. He was joined in New Vrindavan, he's out of there. And he compiled this, and it's mostly the writings of the prisoners. How, they were just normal people growing up, but he got into drugs and alcohol, and one day he got drunk and he killed somebody. And he goes into jail, it happens all the time. And somehow the devotees who were writing letters and other prisoners, and I was back in the early 80s, I was visiting a prisoner in Bordentown Prison near Philadelphia. I didn't first contact him. He was contacted by Yogeshwara and Achyutananda Swami in New York. But that was a far drive from New York. And they found out I was going to Philly. They said, why don't you, because it was close to Philadelphia. So I started visiting him. And it was amazing. The guy was reading the CC. He was chanting 64 rounds. He was kind of an outcast. He was kind of a freak. So he would get attacked. So he learned karate in the jail, so he could fend off the attacks. And then he was getting out. He got out a few months after I started. And he came to the temple in Philadelphia, and he was doing okay. But as it happens with a lot of them, once they get out, the old temptations started coming, and after some time, he took a long walk. I didn't see him again. But now you find devotees they get initiated and they come out. Yeah, the initiated devotees. But their stories are so moving. How they're in this jail and they're suffering like anything, and they get a book. Another devotee gives them a little coming back or whatever it is, and they learn about the ministry. Then they start corresponding with devotees. And it's a wonderful, encouraging statement. But this whole world, that's the first thing you read, is the whole world is a prison house. This is a prison. Durga. Durga means a fort, a prison house. So we're all prisoners, and we don't even know it. We think, oh, I'm free to do as I like, but you're in the prison of your unwanted desires. Lust, anger, greed, illusion. Another favorite verse I have, you've heard before. Now, let's start. Kama dinang katina katita palita durnideshas tesham jata maina kaduna natrapano prashantihi utsrijaitan natayodapate sampratam labna buddhis tvamayatak shadanam abhayam mam niyung svatmadasye. This is Lord Chaitanya's, he cited this verse, probably written by Madhavendra Puri, in his teachings in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sanatana Goswami. Now, there's three phases of the teaching. One is Sambandha, where you understand I'm a spirit, there's God, and with this world, relationship. Then they teach the process, Abhideya. Finally, the third phase is Prayojana, the final goal, pure love of God. So he's starting to teach him about the practice. And he quotes this verse, I put it into a poem. It says, in how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They've shown me no mercy. Yet on I've gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting these hellish desires, for my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. There's so much in that verse. The idea is we have to serve. If we're not going to serve Krishna, we're going to serve lust, anger, greed, illusion, all of these impetuses. And we can get more and more entangled in this world. We can even lose the human form of life. So the intelligence, by hearing the Shastra, then it becomes purified. It said, okay, I'm not going to serve them, I'm going to serve Krishna. If you serve Krishna, if you chant Hare Krishna, then the material desires start to slacken. You find that, I don't really need all that. I'm not, I don't have to. The first thing that goes is, I don't need meat. I don't have to eat hamburgers anymore, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. When is prasadam? And then, okay, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That's the first thing to go. But the point is that you wake up. You wake up, So this is what Krishna is teaching us here. And now he's going to have all of this worshipping of gods and for material benefit in this life or in future life is just your knowledge has been stolen away. This is all about knowledge. Those who are really in knowledge surrender to me. But Rita Jnana, those whose knowledge has been stolen away by what? Kama. Not just kama, but material desires. They surrender unto the devas. Or they surrender unto their mind, or they surrender unto some politician or whatever, But they don't surrender unto me. Tung tam niyamastayat. And corresponding following the rules and regulations for that worship, prakrita niyataksvaya, according to their own natures, according to the modes of nature. The modes of nature, the more you're in the mode of passion and ignorance, the more your real knowledge is covered, the more your ability to be inspired to understand this transcendental knowledge is just destroyed. That's why it's important to lead a life of purity, cleanliness, mode of goodness, so that the lower modes can take hold of you. Because if you get into the mode of ignorance and passion, you can deviate, fall away from the path. We've seen it over the years. I've been in this thing for 50 years, so I've seen a lot of devotees come and go. But you don't have to go. It's not incumbent if you do it right, So, it's time we adjourn for the next stage. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.